This is a scene from the multi-Oscar winning blockbuster Saving Private Ryan. I re-watched this film recently and realised that the film is not really about war. It's about existentialism and how to live a good life. This is probably what explains, partially, its popularity. I think this movie is so popular because the themes of the movie resonate with us at such a deep level that we can't help but be engrossed. The old man in the graveyard is Private Ryan, just 50 or so years after World War II. He wanted to know if he had made the most of his life, especially given that others laid down their lives so that he could survive.
Tell me I have led a good life.
What?
Tell me I'm a good man.
You are.
This is an example of an existential question, similar to the type of thoughts and questions we all ask ourselves. I feel a responsibility to make something of my life, to live a good life. I feel guilty about wasting my time. I feel like I'm not living up to my full potential. What is the meaning of life and why am I here? If you ask yourself any of these questions, then you're not alone. Thoughts like these are often referred to as existential anxiety or existential guilt. Existential guilt arises when one is distracted from or impeded from exerting one's will and responsibility in living up to one's unique potential. In this video, I want to share with you what I believe is the formula for dealing with these questions. The formula, if you will, for living a good life and a full life. Man's fundamental challenge. Many philosophers, poets, writers, and religions have wrestled with the question of what we should do with our lives. Although some people are lucky and find a clear path in life and will never spend a second contemplating it, many other people, on the hand, spend a lifetime struggling to find an answer. What makes things worse is that existential anxiety is compounded by the fact that we spend half of our life in the face of struggle and suffering. What's more, it often feels like this struggle is futile. I personally have had 2 tours of Afghanistan with the military. The mission down there was hard and often felt pointless. I remember one soldier who described it like pushing water up a hill with a rake. The concept of life as a never-ending, futile struggle is encapsulated in the Greek mythological story of Sisyphus. For angering the gods, Sisyphus was punished by Zeus in the afterlife. Sisyphus was forced to roll an immense boulder up a hill, only for it to roll down every time it neared the top, repeating this action for eternity. Many philosophers have likened man's life to that of Sisyphus. Thoroughness. To further compound the human condition, we have to cope with the randomness of the lot we are given in life. Martin Heidegger called this concept thrownness. The concept is that you're thrown into a certain life without choice. You're born into a specific body, with a family, in a particular culture, and at a given moment in human history. It's all rather random. Why were you born into your particular life, and not that of someone else's? Why are you white or black or Asian? Why are you born stupid or disabled? Why are you perhaps born highly intelligent, but nobody will maybe listen to you? You didn't get to pick the challenges you face. Existential anxiety as the default. In some respects, you can say that this suffering and existential anxiety is our default state. Being happy and joyful and enjoying life can be seen as an exception rather than the norm. For example, if I was a computer, a PC, and had my hard disk wiped and I rebooted, then I would likely reboot into a state of existential anxiety and suffering. This is at odds with our modern day thinking that has created the expectation that our natural default is to be happy, and any divergence is a mental illness that should be cured. If you abandon a child in a shopping mall, it doesn't cry because it's upset. The child is simply returning to the default state of existential stress and fear. It's only when the child is around a caregiver that it feels safe and can thus experience positive emotions. So this begs the question, how do we cope with the burden of all this existential anxiety, existential guilt, futile suffering, and randomness? What's the meaning of life, and how do we live a good life? How to live a good and authentic life. Align yourself with nature. Carl Jung argued that we should embrace nature and align ourselves with it. This can be likened to living aligned with God or the universe. I'm not personally religious. God to me is merely what some call the grand ordered design. It's a metaphor for the universe or nature. Others call it Kasha, the ether, or the logos. The concept is simple. It's wise to live in line with the natural laws of the universe and nature. Fighting nature is like trying to swim upstream or hold back the tide. The reward for living aligned with nature is you can experience heaven right here on earth. As Eckhart Tolle says, heaven is not a location, but refers to the inner realm of consciousness. Later on, I will explain what this entails, but it starts with accepting the world as it presents itself to you. The alternative is to reject the world around you. This is analogous to rejecting nature or God. We can have thoughts like, life should be different, events should have played out differently, the world is unfair and it has to change. And so the thinking goes. This train of thought can soon lead to one becoming resentful of the world around oneself. At this point, you kind of play out the story of Lucifer. Here you are thrown out of heaven and fall into the depths of hell. Metaphorically speaking, at least. The story of Lucifer can be seen as an analogy for the psychopathology of what happens when you reject the world around you. Which, quite frankly, isn't great, because in hell, there is just suffering. Once you've arrived, you can soon spiral downwards, further into the depths of resentfulness and suffering. This is similar to the concept of Dante's Infernos, with the different levels of hell and suffering. So, in a metaphorical sense at least, life will lead you down a path. And at some point, you'll meet a parting in the road. And just like Faust, you must choose which path to take. Do you A, accept the world as it is, and take the path that aligns yourself with nature and your authentic self? Or do you B, reject the world as it is, and thus reject God, or nature, or the universe, whatever you may call it? Unfortunately, although it's not clear at the time, this is also the road to a metaphorical hell. The road to hell. The Old Testament is full of golden nuggets of wisdom about living a good and authentic life. There are lots of stories of what people did to mess up. The value of these stories is to learn from them and avoid repeating them in your own life. One example is the very first story after the story of Adam and Eve, which is about their metaphorical sons, Cain and Abel. The gist of the story is that Cain gets mad at the world because things don't quite work out for him as he is expected. This is hard for Cain to take, especially as things seem to work out great for his brother. As a result, he understandably gets resentful. In fact, he gets so resentful at God and the world that he ends up killing his brother in a futile attempt to punish God. The lesson we are supposed to learn from this story is that it's very easy to see life as unfair and to feel there is too much suffering. Then we can just blame other people or our life or our situation and ultimately become resentful. There is a reason why this is the first story after the story of Adam and Eve. This is such a common psychopathology that our Hebrew ancestors picked up on it and wrote it down at the very start of their very most important text. In life, this psychopathology can be a slippery slope. If you become resentful, you can soon go down the rabbit hole. Some even end up taking this to the nth degree. One example is the kids that conducted the Columbine shootings. An analysis of what they wrote shows these kids weren't crazy. They were just very, very resentful of the world and wanted to punish everyone in it. So they walked into their school with MAC-10 machine pistols and killed 12 people before committing suicide. This type of thinking happens to lots of people, just to a lesser degree most of the time. I know that I personally, at some points in my life, have felt this way, started feeling resentful to the world. This thinking is why some people become bitter and spiteful and resent many things that happen in their life. We all know women that have become bitter and resentful of all other men, or men that have been rejected by so many women that they become bitter towards all women. Another more common destination, if you should go down the road of resentfulness, is to become nihilistic, to give up, to say, fuck it, what's the point? Blame someone else and then decide to take no responsibility. Which is really nice in a way. You never have to take any responsibility for anything. You'll feel pretty carefree. However, the price is existential anxiety, guilt, and a lack of positive emotions. And I'll come on to why this is the case later in the video. Now, this psychology makes it easy to start blaming everything and everyone else for our problems. Current examples we often hear nowadays are to blame the patriarchy, white privilege, the Illuminati, the EU, capitalism, globalism. It doesn't matter what it is. Of course, life is full of suffering. So no matter where you go looking for it, you'll easily find some injustice or suffering in your life. And it's easy then to blame this on some anonymous group or person. Your authentic self. So, what is the way to avoid this road to hell and to live an authentic life? Well, the answer is to find your telos. Aristotle described telos as your full potential or inherent purpose. For example, the telos of a knife is to cut. To find this telos is to find what you were born to do. The analogy is to walk with God. Napoleon Hill called it the chief aim. Carl Jung called it the authentic integrated self. And Freud referred to this as the ego. Telos for many is elusive. Discovering your telos can often be achieved by traveling inwards, reflecting within yourself in a similar way to meditation. It's analogous to having a conversation with God. No outside authority can tell you what your telos is, although many may try. No other person can tell you how to live an authentic life. Many of us spend our lives living according to the voices that we hear on the outside. Living according to these outside authorities creates what Freud called the superego, which he believed manifested many of our pathologies. Finding your telos is like finding a torch that will bring light to the darkness around you, the darkness being an analogy for the existential anxiety and chaos Living according to your telos is what allows you to deal with the existential chaos. It is like being adrift at sea, surrounded by fog, and slowly seeing the light from the lighthouse emerge from the fog. Your telos also sparks a fire in your belly. It gives you an energy, an enthusiasm that inspires you. This spark can help you live an authentic life to fulfill your potential. In short, it will help you live a good life, the type of life Ryan hoped he had lived. Finding your telos. How does one find one's telos? The strongest clue is found in your hierarchy of values. Some say that your highest value in life is your telos. Identifying your highest values will help you discover your life's telos. If you follow what inspires you from within, you will discover your chief aim in life. The science of values is known as teleology. I won't get into the process of discovering your values here for brevity, but this can easily be found on Google. Your values dictate what you want and don't want. They help you work out what future you want. And from here, you can start to uncover your telos, your chief aim. By taking action repeatedly, gaining feedback from the world, you can start moving toward your telos. True goals aligned with your highest values will bring you inspiration and enthusiasm. In Old English, inspiration meant divine guidance, and in Latin, it meant spirit or breath within. Enthusiasm comes from the Greek meaning en theos, or divine God within. Once you start down this path, you will discover an inner energy and fire that drives you to act. If you feel enthusiasm and inspiration for the day ahead when you wake up in the morning, presence and certainty in your actions during the day, and love and gratitude in the evening for the day that you've had, then you will know that you're on the right track. This is the state of true intrinsic motivation. What's more, this chief aim structures your perception, and it brings order to the chaos of life. Ordo ab chaos. Ordo ab chaos is Latin for order from chaos. Living an authentic life will bring meaning to your daily life. It creates order out of the existential chaos. It creates structure and meaning where there was none before. This meaning is what allows you to cope with all the toil and suffering in life, the existential chaos. Living authentically will help create alignment between your inner world and your external world. It aligns your past, your present, and your future. It also aligns small daily tasks with longer-term, higher-order goals. The universe, like Heraclitus said, is a synthesis of opposites. There will always be both challenge and support, suffering and ease in life. But once you have a chief aim, you'll be more able to endure these challenges and suffering because you have a why. Friedrich Nietzsche said, "He who has a why to live for can bear it almost anyhow." Your brain is essentially a goal orientation machine. Your brain perceives and structures how you see the world in terms of goal attainment. Goals help structure a chaotic world of endless complex detail. And your brain works by firstly perceiving a goal. Secondly, it will perceive obstacles that stand in the way of this goal, to which they will attach negative emotions. Thirdly, the tools that you perceive will help you move towards this goal. Your brain will attach positive emotions. And lastly, the remaining almost infinite amounts of details that are available in the world will be blurred out by your brain. Now, the structuring of the world in this way creates emotion, which drives your actions. In this way, your chief aim, or your hierarchy of values, helps structure the world around you. Neuroscientifically, this occurs through several processes, but one particularly important system is the reticular activating system. This system is a bunch of nerves in our brainstems that filters out unnecessary information, so the important stuff gets through. Your RAS takes what is important for you and creates a filter for it. It then sifts through the data collected by your senses and presents only the pieces that are important to you. It is like a Google algorithm, which basically sorts through a lot of data and presents you with the best search match. The RAS is like an algorithm that is based on your highest values. It brings to your attention what is most important in regard to achieving your goal. This is one of several neurological processes that bring structure and meaning to the world around you. The dopaminergic system. The dopaminergic system is a pathway in your brain. Most simply, it is the system that allows you to feel positive emotion. This system is famous for its link to gambling, addiction, and drug abuse. For example, cocaine and heroin both work on the dopaminergic pathway in the brain. Simply put, you snort cocaine, it creates an increase in dopamine, and you feel good. However, the real purpose of this system isn't to make you feel good when you snort a line of cocaine. This system allows us to pursue things, even those of great uncertainty, over very long durations. Essentially, dopamine is released when we are en route to goals and we pursue them. Even if those goals are distant and clouded in uncertainties, dopamine is what fuels us and mammals away from where we are and towards these new places and goals. Now, your values are connected to this system. This is because your values or your value structure tells you that certain things are better than other things. They tell you what you want and what you don't want. This essentially helps you to structure the world as what is, the unbearable present, and the what should be, which is the ideal future. In this way, your values create your goals. Your hierarchy of values create your chief aim, your telos. Now, this is a key point. If you have no values, then you have no goals, no telos. If you have no goals, then you have no way of activating the dopaminergic system. No daily actions toward your goals means you get no positive emotions. And what remains? All you are left with is your default negative emotions that go hand in hand with your existential anxiety. All this within a world surrounded by boundless suffering and futile struggle. This is not a very nice place to be. Once this happens, you have a slippery slope, as described earlier in this video. Resentment, blame, and even nihilism. It's very easy to follow down the footsteps of Cain from the Bible. Remember, Cain gets resentful at the world and ends up trying to punish God by killing his brother. The way to avoid the fate of Cain, or the path to hell, is the same as living a good and authentic life. The path starts by going inside of yourself to discover your values. This hierarchy of values will tell you what you don't want and what you do want. Consequently, you will be able to orientate yourself in the world and begin to take action towards what you want. Once you take these very first few steps, your dopaminergic system will start to kick in. You will be rewarded with positive emotion as you begin to move towards your goals. If you do this repeatedly, these networks will reinforce themselves. Neurons that fire together wire together. Over time, these narrow pathways can turn into large motorways in your mind. If you can additionally connect with your telos, you gain the inspiration and enthusiasm I described. In this manner, you can start an upward spiral. And similarly to Dante and Virgil, you may find a path out of your own metaphorical hell. Curiosity. Phenomenologists believe that the things that are valuable to you will appear in front of you. In Greek mythology, this role was played out by the god Hermes, who was the messenger between humans and the gods. In some ways, he was a guide. A great example of this in our modern society is that of Harry Potter. In Harry Potter films, magical objects were always appearing to Harry. They would sparkle in some way or grab his attention. Initially, they would often seemingly take him away from his goal, but in fact would somehow lead him to the one vital piece he was looking for that would help him solve the puzzle. When you're wandering around in the world, you need to keep your eyes open to that which spontaneously appears, grabs your attention, and inspires you. Notice that which catches your eye and sparks your imagination. Life, in some ways, is like setting off on a journey through a forest. You may know your destination, long and far off, but you cannot see the whole path ahead. And just like a Lord of the Rings adventure, you cannot possibly know what will appear on the way. Similarly, in life, the world will manifest around you, and certain things will emerge to catch your attention. These things that appear can be viewed as a message from the gods, signs helping you toward your chief aim. Your job is to pay attention to that which appears to you. You may have a plan set out, but take notice of what appears in front of you. Often they will help guide you on your path that otherwise seems unclear. So summing up, life isn't easy. It involves lots of suffering, and your default setting is often anxiety. For you, there are two paths that you can take. The easier and justifiable path is perhaps the more logical decision. But as with most easy decisions, it won't reward you in the end. It's full of resentfulness and nihilism, and it's one where you can create your own hell here on earth. The other path is a road less traveled. It involves more work, but it also offers more reward in the longer run. One in which you can live a life full of inspiration, presence, full of both love and gratitude. It's one where you can create your own heaven here on earth.